Captain Mike Thompson stood in front of the mirror in his quarters, straightening his navy blue uniform one last time. The silver stars on his collar caught the light as he moved. Today was supposed to be a good day. His wife Lisa and their son, Billy, were finally joining him at the new colony on Kepler 4, for to be. After 3 years of military assignments that kept them apart, they would finally be together again. Mike walked to his desk and picked up the datapad, showing the passenger list for transport vessel, New Horizon. He scrolled through the names until he found what he was looking for. Lisa Thompson, age 34. Billy Thompson, age 8. Both listed under civilian passenger status, heading to New Eden Colony. Mike smiled. Billy would love the new world. It had 2 small moons and purple sunsets. The kid had always been fascinated by space, always asking questions about different planets and alien species. At 8 years old, Billy was curious about everything, smart as a whip, and had the kind of energy that could wear out 3 adults. What Mike didn't know was that 3 sectors away, someone else was also very interested in the New Horizon and its passengers. Krex pressed his 4-fingered hand against the cold metal wall of his dying ship. The Vorthok pirate captain looked nothing like a human. His gray skin was covered in scales, and his yellow eyes glowed in the dim light of the ship's bridge. But despite their differences, Krex understood desperation just like any human would. His home planet was slowly being consumed by its dying star. The Vorthok government had abandoned planets like his, leaving millions to die. Krex and his crew were some of the few who had managed to escape, but they were running out of time, money, and hope. "Captain, the transport is right on schedule," said Vash, Krex's second-in-command. Vash was younger, more eager, and definitely more stupid than Krex liked. But crew members willing to work on a dying ship were hard to find. Krex had been watching the New Horizon for 3 weeks now. He knew its route, its security systems, and most importantly, its cargo. Human children were worth a fortune on the black market. Some alien species collected them like rare pets. Others believed human children had special properties that could extend life or bring good luck. Krex didn't care why they wanted human kids. He only cared that they were willing to pay enough money to buy his people a new home. The plan was simple. Wait for the transport to pass through the asteroid field near Sigma Draconis. The rocks would hide their ship from sensors. Disable the communications first. Grab 1 or 2 human children and disappear into hyperspace before anyone could respond. Easy money. Remember, we don't hurt anyone unless we have to, Krex told his crew of 6 other Vorthok pirates. We get in, take what we came for, and get out. No unnecessary killing. The truth was, Krex had never killed a human before. He had heard stories about what happened to aliens who hurt humans. Those stories usually ended with entire pirate fleets being wiped out by human military forces. On the New Horizon, Billy Thompson was having the time of his life. The transport ship was huge, with observation decks that offered amazing views of space. His mother Lisa was resting in their cabin, tired from the long journey. So Billy had been exploring the ship on his own. He pressed his nose against the thick glass of the observation deck, watching the stars streak past as the ship traveled through hyperspace. Billy had always wondered what it would be like to travel faster than light, and now he was actually doing it. "Pretty cool, isn't it?" said an older kid named Alex who had walked up beside him. "It's amazing," Billy replied, his eyes wide with wonder. "My dad says the new colony has purple sunsets because of the gases in the atmosphere. Your dad sounds smart. What does he do?" "He's a captain in the defense fleet. He fights bad aliens and protects people." Billy didn't know it, but in just a few hours, his father would need to protect him more than anyone else in the galaxy. The attack came without warning. One moment, the New Horizon was peacefully traveling through hyperspace, and the next moment alarms were blaring throughout the ship. Red emergency lights flashed as the ship dropped out of hyperspace with a violent shudder. Krex's ship had used an illegal hyperspace disruptor to force the transport back into normal space. Before the New Horizons crew could react, the pirates fired an electromagnetic pulse that knocked out the ship's communications and most of its defensive systems. Billy felt the ship shake and heard the alarms. Other passengers were screaming and running through the corridors. Billy tried to get back to his mother's cabin, but the ship's artificial gravity was fluctuating, making it hard to walk. "Lisa, Billy." He could hear his mother calling from somewhere in the ship, but the corridors were crowded with panicking passengers. That's when Krex and his crew boarded the ship. The Vorthog pirates moved quickly through the transport, stunning any crew members who tried to resist. Krex headed straight for the passenger sections, looking for human families with children. He found Billy in the observation deck, separated from the other passengers, and looking scared, but not crying. "Perfect. Come with me, little human," Krex said in broken English. "No one will hurt you if you cooperate." Billy looked up at the tall alien with the gray scales and glowing yellow eyes. "I want my mom," he said quietly. "You'll see her again soon," Krex lied, gently but firmly taking Billy's hand. "Right now, you're coming with us." Within minutes, Krex and his crew were back on their ship with their prize. Billy sat in a small room, still remarkably calm for a human child who had just been kidnapped by aliens. He kept staring at Krex with bright blue eyes that seemed far too intelligent for someone so young. "Easy money," Krex told Vash, as they prepared to jump back into hyperspace. "One healthy human child should be enough to buy us passage to the Outer Rim." But Krex wanted to know more about their captive. He pulled out a scanner and pointed it at Billy to read the identification chip that all human colonists carried. The scanner beeped, and information appeared on the small screen. Krex read it once, then read it again, then felt his blood turn cold. Billy Thompson, son of Captain Mike Thompson, hero of the Centauri Defense, decorated veteran of the Outer Rim Wars, and currently commanding officer of the Human Defense Fleet's 3rd Battle Group. Krex had just kidnapped the son of one of humanity's most famous military officers. Vash, Krex said, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes, Captain, we're dead." News of Billy's kidnapping hit human space like a bomb going off. Within hours, every military base, every colony, and every human ship in a 50-light-year radius knew what had happened. Captain Mike Thompson's son had been taken by alien pirates. Mike Thompson wasn't just any military officer. 3 years ago, during the Zephyrian War, he had commanded a single destroyer against an entire enemy battle fleet. For 72 hours, Mike had used nothing but tactical genius and pure stubborn determination to keep the aliens from reaching the civilian colony of New Manchester. He held them off until the main human fleet arrived and drove the invaders back. The story had become legend among human military forces. Mike Thompson was the man who never gave up, never retreated, and most importantly, never left anyone behind. Not his crew, not civilians under his protection, and definitely not his own son. On the bridge of his flagship, the heavy cruiser Defiant, Mike stared at the tactical display, showing his son's last known location. His jaw was set in a hard line, and his hands were clenched into fists. Around him, his crew worked in tense silence. They all knew their captain, and they all knew what was coming. "Sir, we're receiving priority messages from Fleet Command," reported Lieutenant Davis from the communications station. "Admiral Rodriguez wants to speak with you personally." "Tell the Admiral I'll call him back," Mike said without taking his eyes off the display. "Right now, I'm hunting pirates." What Mike didn't know was that his son Billy was already changing the situation aboard the pirate ship in ways that no one could have predicted. Billy sat in the small room where Krex had locked him, trying hard not to cry. He missed his mom and dad, and the alien ship smelled weird, like metal and something sour that he couldn't identify. The walls were made of some kind of gray metal, and there were strange symbols painted on them that he couldn't read. But something was happening too. Billy, that had never happened before. When he got really scared or upset, things around him started to act strange. The first time it happened, Billy thought he was imagining it. He was thinking about his mother Lisa, wishing she was there to hug him, when the small metal cup of water that Krex had given him began to float in the air. Billy blinked, and the cup fell back down with a clatter. That was weird, Billy whispered to himself, but it kept happening. When Billy felt lonely, small objects in the room would move by themselves. When he got scared about never seeing his parents again, the metal walls would make strange groaning sounds, as if something was pressing against them from the inside. Krex noticed the problems first. He was trying to pilot the ship toward the Outer Rim territories when his instruments started going crazy. Navigation computers would shut down for no reason, then restart themselves. The ship's artificial gravity would flicker on and off in random sections. Vash, run a full diagnostic on all systems, Krex ordered. Something's wrong with this ship. Already did, Captain Vash replied, looking confused. According to the computers, everything is working perfectly. But the reality says something different. That's when they heard it. A long, slow, groaning sound coming from the metal hull of the ship itself. It sounded like the entire vessel was being twisted by invisible hands. Krex rushed to the room where they were keeping Billy. Through the small window in the door, he could see the human child sitting on the floor, tears running down his face. And all around Billy, pieces of metal debris were floating in the air like they were underwater instead of in a spaceship. "What is this thing?" Krex whispered in horror. Billy looked up and saw the alien captain watching him through the window. The floating objects immediately crashed to the floor as Billy quickly wiped his eyes. "I'm sorry," Billy called out. "I don't know why that happens. I can't control it." Krex stepped back from the door, his yellow eyes wide with fear. In all his years as a pirate, he had never encountered anything like this. Humans weren't supposed to have supernatural powers. They were just another species, maybe a little more aggressive than most, but still just aliens like everyone else. Vash appeared beside him. "Captain, I'm picking up some kind of energy readings coming from this section of the ship. The scanners can't identify what type of energy it is, but it's definitely not normal. The human child is doing this," Krex said. "Somehow, that little thing is affecting our entire ship. That's impossible. Humans don't have psychic abilities." But even as Vash said it, they both heard the hull groaning again. This time, they could actually see the metal walls of the corridor starting to bend inward, as if some invisible force was squeezing the ship like a tin can. "We need to get rid of this kid before he destroys us all," Vash said, panic creeping into his voice. "We can't just dump him in space," Krex replied. "If we kill Captain Thompson's son, every human in the galaxy will hunt us down. But if we keep him, he might accidentally tear our ship apart." That's when their communication system crackled to life with an incoming transmission. But this wasn't from any ship or space station. This was a priority military broadcast from human space. And somehow, their systems had picked it up despite being outside normal communication range. The message was encrypted. But Vash had spent years learning how to break human military codes. As the words appeared on their screen, both pirates felt their blood turn cold. Priority Alpha alert to all human military forces. Classification: psionic potential offspring. Evolution Phase 2, human. Subject identification: Billy Thompson, son of Captain Mike Thompson. This is not a standard kidnapping situation. Subject possesses undeveloped psychokinetic abilities that may manifest under extreme stress. Recovery is critical, not just for the child's safety, but for the safety of anyone in proximity to the subject. All available ships are to respond immediately. Use of any force necessary is authorized. Krex read the message 3 times before. The full meaning sank in. Billy wasn't just any human child. He was something new. Something that humanity had been secretly developing. The kid had actual supernatural powers, and apparently, The human government had been expecting something like this to happen. Psionic potential, Vash whispered. Evolution Phase 2. Captain, they're not just humans anymore. They're becoming something else. Another groaning sound echoed through the ship, and this time, several of the lights went out completely. In the darkness, Krex could hear Billy crying again, and with each sob, the ship's hull creaked and bent a little more. They had wanted to capture a valuable human child to sell on the black market. Instead, they had kidnapped a developing psychic weapon whose own father commanded one of the most dangerous military forces in known space. And now, that weapon was scared, angry, and slowly tearing their ship apart from the inside. Captain Mike Thompson stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Defiant, watching as ship after ship appeared on his tactical display. Within 6 hours of Billy's kidnapping, every human vessel within 100 light-years had changed course and was heading toward the pirates' last known position. "Sir, the destroyer Richmond is reporting in," said Lieutenant Davis. "Captain Chen says his ship is fully armed and ready for combat operations." "The battleship Phoenix just dropped out of hyperspace," added another officer. "Admiral Brooks sends his regards and asks for targeting priorities." Mike nodded grimly. This was what happened when you took a human child. It didn't matter if you were a small-time pirate or the emperor of a galactic empire. Humanity would mobilize everything they had to get their kids back. But Mike was about to do something that would shock even his own people. He wasn't just calling in human ships. "Get me a secure channel to Admiral Rebecca Wells at Terra Command," Mike ordered. Admiral Wells appeared on the main screen within minutes. She was a tough woman in her 50s, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had known Mike for over a decade, and she could see the controlled fury in his expression. "Mike, I heard about Billy. I'm sorry. What do you need?" "I need you to call in every favor we're owed," Mike said. "Every alien species that humanity has helped. Every government that owes us a debt. I want them all hunting for my son." Admiral Wells raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot of favors, Mike. Are you sure you want to spend all that political capital on one kidnapping?" Mike's expression didn't change. "Rebecca, they took my boy. I don't care if I have to burn every bridge we've built in the last 50 years. I want my son back." Within hours, Admiral Wells had contacted alien governments across the galaxy. The results were immediate and dramatic. The Soros Republic, whose homeworld humanity had saved from a plague 10 years earlier, deployed 3 battle fleets to search different sectors of space. The reptilian aliens were known for their methodical approach to hunting, and they began systematically checking every asteroid field, every space station, and every uninhabited planet in their assigned areas. The Insectoid Hive Collective, which owed humanity a debt for helping them defeat a robot uprising, sent out thousands of their small scout ships. The bug-like aliens had the advantage of being able to communicate instantly across vast distances through their psychic link. If any of their ships spotted the pirates, every other hive ship in the galaxy would know within seconds. Even the proud, ethereal coalition, energy beings who rarely involved themselves in physical matters, began using their advanced sensors to scan space for the pirates' ship. They owed humanity a favor for helping them relocate their people when their star went supernova. But the most shocking response came from the Zephyrians, the same species that Mike had fought during the war 3 years earlier. Despite being former enemies, they sent a squadron of their fastest ships to join the hunt. "Why are they helping us?" Lieutenant Davis asked in amazement as the Zephyrian ships appeared on their sensors. "Because even our enemies know that humans don't negotiate when it comes to our children," Mike replied. "They'd rather help us find Billy than risk us deciding they were involved somehow." Across the galaxy, other alien species watched in fascination and terror as the hunt unfolded. Most spacefaring civilizations had a simple approach to kidnapping. If one of their children was taken, They might send a few ships to look for them. Maybe pay a ransom if the price was reasonable. If the child was killed, they would mourn and move on. Humans were different. Humans were terrifying. They're mobilizing their entire military over one child, observed Counselor Zeth of the Altarian Federation, watching the news reports. This is madness. No, replied his advisor, an old diplomat who had dealt with humans before. This is what makes them so dangerous. Other species see one child as an acceptable loss. Humans see it as a reason to go to war. The stories were already spreading through alien communities. Humans who had fought entire battles to recover the bodies of dead soldiers so they could be buried properly. Human parents who had spent their life savings to hire mercenaries when their governments couldn't help find missing children. Human military units that had disobeyed direct orders rather than abandoned wounded comrades. They never leave anyone behind, the advisor continued. Not their soldiers, not their civilians, and definitely not their children. That's what makes them so effective as allies, and so terrifying as enemies. Meanwhile, Krex was learning this lesson the hard way. The Vorthok pirate had been trying desperately to contact human authorities, hoping to negotiate Billy's return in exchange for safe passage out of human space. But every time he managed to get through to a human ship or station, the response was exactly the same. This is Commander Roberts of the cruiser Intrepid. You have kidnapped a human child. Return him immediately and prepare to be boarded. Wait, please listen, Krex would plead. I'm willing to return the boy unharmed. I just want safe passage for my crew. Negative. You took our child. The penalty is death. You have 10 minutes to surrender before we open fire. Krex had tried this conversation with a dozen different human commanders. The answer was always the same. Humans didn't negotiate with people who took their children, ever. Captain, we're picking up more ships on long-range sensors, Vash reported, his voice shaking with fear. That makes 37 human vessels converging on this sector. 32nd Krex stared at the tactical display in disbelief. 1 child. It gets worse, Captain. I'm also detecting Soros ships, Hive collective scouts, and what looks like an entire ethereal coalition task force. They're all searching for us. Krex felt his hopes crashing down around him. He had thought kidnapping a human child would be easy money. Instead, he had apparently triggered the largest manhunt in galactic history. Other pirate crews in the sector were already running. Word had spread through the criminal underworld that Captain Mike Thompson's son had been taken, and every smart criminal knew what that meant. When humans went to war over their children, anyone in the area could become collateral damage. Captain, I'm receiving a priority message from the Crimson Brotherhood, Vash reported. Captain Rodriguez says his crew is leaving the sector immediately. He suggests we do the same. We can't run forever, Krex replied. Eventually they'll find us, and when they do, ... He didn't need to finish the sentence. Both pirates knew what happened to aliens who hurt human children. The stories were legendary throughout the galaxy. Entire pirate fleets wiped out. Criminal organizations hunted to extinction. Space stations destroyed for harboring kidnappers. But running was still better than staying and fighting. Because in the distance, Krex could see the lights of human warships getting closer, and he knew that Captain Mike Thompson would never stop hunting until he had his son back, even if it meant burning down half the galaxy to do it. Billy's powers were getting stronger every hour, and Krex was running out of time and options. What had started as objects floating in the air had become something much more dangerous and frightening. The 8-year-old boy would have nightmares about being lost in space, never seeing his parents again. When he slept, his dreams somehow affected the fabric of space around the ship. Krex would watch in terror as the stars outside the viewport would bend and twist, as if reality itself was being warped by the sleeping child. The gravitational readings are off the charts, Vash whispered, staring at his instruments in disbelief. According to these sensors, There's a miniature black hole forming and dissipating every few minutes near the kid's room. That's impossible, Krex replied, but even as he said it, he felt the ship shudder and groan under forces that shouldn't exist. When Billy was awake and missing his mother Lisa, the ship's electronics would go completely insane. Computer screens would flicker with strange symbols. The lights would flash in patterns that seemed almost like a language. Communication systems would pick up phantom signals from empty space. During one particularly bad episode, when Billy was crying for his dad, every screen on the ship simultaneously displayed the same image. Captain Mike Thompson in his military uniform, as if Billy was somehow projecting his memories into the ship's computer systems. This isn't natural, Krex muttered, watching sparks fly from overloaded control panels. No species develops abilities like this randomly. That's when Vash made a discovery that changed everything they thought they knew about humanity. Captain, I've been trying to slice into human military databases. Looking for information about the kid, Vash said, his claws clicking nervously against his datapad. I found something, but you're not going to like it. Show me. Vash transferred the stolen files to the main screen. What Krex saw made his blood turn cold. These weren't medical records or school reports about Billy Thompson. These were classified research documents from something called the Human Evolution Project. Project Genesis. Krex, read aloud. Selective breeding program initiated 2157 goal. Development of psychokinetic abilities in human offspring to combat emerging cosmic threats. The files contained detailed genetic charts, showing how human scientists had been carefully tracking bloodlines for over a century. They had identified families with latent psychic potential and encouraged them to have children together. Billy Thompson wasn't just Captain Mike Thompson's son. He was the result of 5 generations of careful genetic planning. They've been breeding these abilities into their species for over 100 years, Vash said in amazement. This kid isn't some random mutation. He's exactly what they wanted to create. But the files contained something even more disturbing. Deep space monitoring. Stations had detected something approaching from outside the galaxy. Something massive, ancient, and hostile. The humans called it the Dark Fleet, and according to their calculations, it would reach human space within the next 50 years. Listen to this, Krex said, reading from one of the classified reports. Standard weapons and conventional military tactics have proven ineffective against Dark Fleet technology in previous galactic encounters. Only psychokinetic intervention has shown potential for disrupting their control systems. Previous encounters, Vash asked. They fought these things before, not humans. Other species, in other galaxies. The files say that every spacefaring civilization eventually faces the Dark Fleet. Most don't survive. The few that do only manage it because they develop individuals with strong psychic abilities. Krex scrolled through more documents, his horror growing with each page. Humanity hadn't just been preparing for war. They had been preparing for the survival of all intelligent life in the galaxy. Children like Billy were humanity's answer to a threat that had destroyed countless civilizations across the universe. They're not breeding weapons, Krex corrected Vash. They're breeding saviors. But knowing the truth didn't solve their immediate problem. Billy's abilities were still growing stronger, and now Captain Mike Thompson's battle fleet had found them, through the ship's external cameras. Krex could see the human warships taking positions around his vessel. 12 massive human dreadnoughts, their hulls bristling with weapons that could turn his small pirate ship into vapor in seconds. But they weren't alone. Soros battle cruisers moved with reptilian precision, their green hulls reflecting the light of the nearby star. Insectoid hive collective vessels swarmed around the perimeter like angry wasps. Even the energy beings of the ethereal coalition were there, their ships glowing with barely contained power. 43 ships, Vash reported, his voice barely above a whisper. They brought 43 warships to rescue one human child. But Captain Mike Thompson had a problem that all those warships couldn't solve. Billy's uncontrolled abilities were creating spatial distortions that made any rescue attempts incredibly dangerous. "Sir, we're detecting massive gravitational fluctuations around the pirate vessel," reported Lieutenant Davis from the bridge of the Defiant. "It's like space itself is being twisted into knots around that ship." Mike stared at the tactical display, watching as his sensors tried to make sense of readings that should have been impossible. His son's developing psychic abilities were affecting the very fabric of space and time around him. "If we try to dock with that ship or transport Billy directly, we could trigger a gravitational collapse," the ship's science officer reported. "The spatial distortions could tear apart anything that gets too close." Mike felt a chill run down his spine. His son wasn't just in danger from the pirates anymore. Billy was becoming something so powerful that his own abilities might accidentally destroy anyone trying to rescue him. "Options?" Mike asked grimly. "Limited, sir?" The distortions seem to be tied to the boy's emotional state. When he's calm, the readings are manageable. But when he gets upset or scared, as if on cue, their sensors detected another gravitational spike from the pirate ship. This one was strong enough to briefly bend the light from nearby stars. "Captain, I'm reading microfractures in the pirate vessel's hull," another officer reported. "That ship is being slowly torn apart from the inside by forces we can barely measure." Mike realized the horrible truth. His son Billy wasn't just a kidnapping victim anymore. He was becoming something that could accidentally kill everyone around him, including the pirates who had taken him, and possibly even the rescue fleet that had come to save him. The boy they had spent generations creating to save the galaxy might destroy them all before he learned to control his new abilities, and they were running out of time. The end came suddenly, and without warning. Billy had been trying to sleep, exhausted from days of fear and confusion, when the nightmares hit harder than ever before. In his dream, he was floating alone in the darkness of space, calling for his parents but hearing only silence. But this time, his sleeping mind did something that terrified everyone within 100 million miles. Captain Vash screamed from his station. "Something's happening outside the ship." Krex rushed to the viewport and felt his heart stop. Space itself was tearing open like fabric being ripped apart. A massive hole in reality was forming just off their starboard side, and it was growing bigger every second. Through the hole, they could see swirling colors and impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. A wormhole. Billy's sleeping mind had accidentally created a wormhole. The gravitational pull was immediate and devastating. Small asteroids that had been floating peacefully nearby were suddenly sucked into the anomaly, disappearing into whatever lay on the other side. Krex's ship groaned and shuddered as it began to be pulled toward the growing tear in space. "All engines full reverse," Krex shouted, but it was no use. The wormhole was too strong, and it was getting stronger. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Mike Thompson watched in horror as his son accidentally created something that could destroy entire solar systems. "Sir, that wormhole is growing exponentially," reported Lieutenant Davis, panic creeping into his voice. "If it reaches critical mass, it could destabilize this entire star system." "Can we help stabilize it?" Mike asked desperately. "Not from this distance, sir. The gravitational distortions are too strong. Any ship that gets close enough to help will be torn apart." Mike stared at the tactical display, watching as the pirate ship was slowly dragged toward the anomaly. In a few minutes, his son would be pulled into that hole in space, and there would be nothing left to rescue. That's when something unexpected happened. A communication channel opened between the human fleet and Krex's ship. "Human ships, this is Captain Krex," came the alien's voice, distorted by the gravitational interference. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but if we don't work together right now, your son is going to die, and probably take half this solar system with him." Mike didn't hesitate. "What do you need?" My ship's power core is more advanced than yours. If we can link our systems with your fleet, we might be able to create a stabilizing field around the boy. But someone needs to get close to him physically. The wormhole is tied to his emotional state. He needs to calm down, or it's going to keep growing. My wife Lisa is aboard the heavy cruiser Intrepid, Mike said immediately. Can you transport her to your ship? The interference is too strong for normal transportation. But if she's willing to risk it, we might be able to get her through using an emergency pod. Lisa Thompson had been listening to the conversation from the bridge of the Intrepid. Without hesitation, she stepped forward. Do it, she said. That's my son in there. The next few minutes were the most terrifying of Mike's life. He watched as his wife climbed into a small emergency pod that was designed to survive crashes, not trips through gravitational anomalies that could tear apart starships. The pod launched from the Intrepid and began its dangerous journey toward the pirate vessel. Meanwhile, human technicians worked frantically with Krex's crew to link their ship systems together. It should have been impossible. Human and Vorthok technology were completely different, but desperation made them creative, and within minutes, they had jury-rigged a connection that allowed the human fleet to channel power through the pirate ship. Lisa's pod barely made it through the gravitational interference, its hull glowing red from the stress. When she finally stepped aboard Krex's ship, the alien pirate captain looked at her with something close to respect. Your child is very powerful, Krex said simply, and very scared. Lisa didn't waste time talking. She rushed to the room where Billy was being held and found him curled up on the floor, tears streaming down his face as he slept fitfully. Around him, pieces of metal were floating in the air, and the walls were bending inward from invisible forces. Billy, sweetheart, it's Mom, Lisa whispered, kneeling beside her son. Mommy's here now. Billy's eyes snapped open, and for a moment, Lisa was afraid the shock of seeing her would make his powers even stronger. But instead, the floating objects gently settled to the floor, and the groaning sounds from the ship's hull gradually faded away. Mom? Billy whispered, as if he couldn't believe she was real. I'm here, baby. Daddy's here too, just outside. You're safe now. As Billy calmed down in his mother's arms, the massive wormhole outside began to shrink. Within minutes, it had collapsed completely, leaving only empty space where it had been threatening to destroy everything. But the crisis wasn't over. Even though Billy was safe, the humans now faced a different problem. Krex and his crew had seen too much. They knew about humanity's secret evolution project. They knew about children like Billy and their incredible abilities. You've seen what our children are capable of, Admiral Rebecca Wells said sternly as she appeared on the communication screen. You know why we protect them so fiercely? That knowledge makes you a security threat to our entire species? Krex felt his hope draining away. After everything they had done to help save Billy, the humans were still going to execute them. But Captain Mike Thompson had a different idea. Admiral, I'd like to make a different proposal, Mike said. Krex and his crew just risked their lives to save my son. They've seen what can happen when children like Billy lose control. That makes them valuable, not dangerous. What are you suggesting, Captain? Let them live, but assign them as Billy's guardians. They understand his abilities better than anyone, except us. We need people who can help us learn how to handle children with these powers. Admiral Wells was quiet for a long moment. You want to trust your son's safety to pirates who kidnapped him? I want to trust it to people who have seen what he's capable of and still chose to help him, Mike replied. Besides, where else are they going to go? Every government in the galaxy knows they've seen our classified information. We're the only ones who might let them live. And so Krex and Vash found themselves in the strangest situation of their lives. Instead of being executed as pirates, they became official guardians and researchers, tasked with helping humanity understand how extreme stress affected their evolved children. Billy recovered quickly from his ordeal. But he was different now, more serious, more aware of what he could do. During quiet moments, Mike would find his son staring out at the stars, with an expression far too mature for an 8-year-old dad. "Why did I have those powers?" Billy asked one day. Mike sat down beside his son and chose his words carefully. "Because something's coming, Billy. Something dangerous, from far away in space. And someday, kids like you are going to be the only ones who can stop it. Is that why you and Mom had me? To fight monsters?" Mike pulled his son close. "We had you, because we love you. But yes, we also had you, because the galaxy needs heroes. And sometimes heroes are just kids who are brave enough to use their gifts to protect others." Billy nodded thoughtfully. "When the bad things come from space, I'll be ready. I know you will, son. But until then, we're going to make sure you're never alone or scared like that again." As Mike held his son, he thought about the classified reports hidden in military databases across human space. The Dark Fleet was still coming. In 47 years, give or take, humanity would face a threat that had destroyed civilizations across multiple galaxies. But they would be ready. Children like Billy would be trained, supported, and protected. They would never again have to face their developing abilities alone and terrified. Humanity's seemingly overprotective nature toward their children wasn't just cultural pride or parental love. It was preparation for a war that would determine the survival of every intelligent species in the galaxy, and Captain Mike Thompson would make sure that when that day came, his son and others like him would have everything they needed to win, because they weren't just protecting their children, they were protecting everyone